Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Troy Munson on Words of Radiance. And this is November 2021 and is probably very apt for our day and age. But this particular podcast is entitled, Where is Our Joy? Now, I will get to where our joy is, but perhaps we should delve in a little bit to where is the world in all of this? How does the world work a little bit more in depth, and how does it tend to steal our joy? So let's kind of dig in just a little bit. When we feel threatened by this ever-changing world and its maneuvers, its ups and downs, its stock market crashes, our cars breaking down, the news that seems to be always bad, relationships that might seem brief. It's all these quote-unquote gifts that the world seems to lend to us and then all of a sudden take away yet again. And if we really want to get free from all this, definitely listen to the remainder of this particular message. Now, in a world like this, we have these illusions, these deceptions, these attacks that are constantly happening to us, and these steal our peace of mind. And when our peace is threatened, it is incredibly difficult to ever perceive or ever think that we could ever be in joy's presence. And joy, when you finally have it, for those of you that are walking that direction, they're like, you know what? I think I'd rather have peace than whatever the world is selling. Then stay tuned. We're going to get to all of it. But the world that we live in really, it lends towards constantly living in a state of defense. I've got to lock my doors. I've got to get better locks. I've got to get a safer car. I've got to get a better seatbelt. I need better airbags. I've got to have food that doesn't have as much toxins in it. I need to have the door on my bedroom locked. I need to make sure that my kids are safe and that they wear a helmet. I need to make sure that my job has a 401k and that my retirement is set up because, if that doesn't happen, then I'm going to be out on the street. I'm going to die. And so we have all these ridiculous defenses all the time that are hitting us from all sides, it appears. And yet, ultimately, it seems like it's right that we should defend or at least create self-defense mechanisms. And what's the craziest thing is that this is never seen as a double threat. But ultimately, every time that you make a defense in your mind about something that you've done, well, I did that because it was supposed to happen, or I needed to do that because if I didn't do that, well, then I wouldn't be here today. Well, all those little mini self-defenses that are built up in our mind are actually showing us that we must be incredibly weak. And if we're incredibly weak, then we're living in a constant state of fear in which joy can never touch. And as we begin to realize that it leads to this ever-increasing defense and attack and defend, constantly happening in our mind and against our friends, our family, what have you, we can't scarcely just simply be ourselves. And now we feel like we're less than enough. We feel like all this stuff has to happen, and now I've got these burdens laid on me, these chains laid across my back and across my shoulders. And ultimately, it's the heaviest cost that we must pay, and that is of our own peace of mind. And if even for just a moment you've thought, you know what, I think perhaps there's something more to me than just a body. Perhaps there's more to this whole weird rat race we call life, and perhaps there is a depth beyond even my understanding within myself that maybe even I could actually possibly use the term of a spiritual something rather in there, or a God presence. And as we seem to let go and we stop being a slave to our ego and all the defensiveness that it has, we all of a sudden start realizing that, you know what, maybe there's something in me that is a part of that unlimited divinity that is God, that is everything, that is Christ, whatever you want to call it, that is presence, that is life itself, whatever form you wish to call that, you might begin to realize that perhaps defenselessness begins to undermine the ego. And as I become more and more defenseless, all of a sudden my strength goes way up. I realize or begin to realize that I'm strong in my defenselessness, not in everything that I defend, because everything that I defend only proves that I am weak and frail. And when I finally decide to let go of the ego's weaknesses, all these weird things that it builds up, it does it in terms of body view or body looking through the eyes of the body, or some people will call body identification. If I identify as just a body, now I'm going to become very, very afraid and very scared. But as I realize that this body is inherently weak, it really actually doesn't need any much help at all. I take in sustenance, it seems to go to the bathroom, it seems to go to sleep, and it seems to have energy, seems to go through weird sicknesses on occasion, but ultimately it doesn't really require a lot of my attention. It's okay just as it is. If I also tend to throw upon the body the burden of pleasure, now I begin to seek out sensual pleasure or visual pleasure or auditory or visual pleasure in the terms of whatever, or maybe I get a rush out of gambling or whatever it is. I now have further burdened myself as the only joy in my life, or only pleasure, if you will, is going to come from the physical senses. As I realize that I let body identification go, and realize that when I'm pretty still and pretty calm and pretty quiet, man, is there a lot of peace there? Is there a lot of happiness? And by golly, if it doesn't feel a bit joyful. And all of a sudden, as you begin that process of letting go, your face becomes a bit more relaxed. Your forehead doesn't crinkle as much. There's a smile that creeps into your eyes more regularly. In fact, almost with a regularity that we would call constantly. Very few things seem to disturb your peace these days. As you let this life go a bit more and a bit more, wear the body a bit more loosely, you don't take yourself so seriously, and all of a sudden these thoughts come in like, you know what, I don't really mind whatever happens. I think I'm pretty okay with whatever wants to happen in life. I see that at most turns I'm well taken care of. If the body has a need for food, by golly, it'll be taken care of. If the body has need for some warmth, my gosh, a coat will appear. Hey, if I'm a little tired, a comfortable bed will be presenting itself to me. And you start realizing that, you know what, as I stop demanding so much out of life, stop putting so much pressure on life, and sit back and realize, you know what, I think life just wants to bless me. And I think I'm going to remain at this peaceful type of place for longer and longer periods of time. In fact, I'm going to gravitate towards being still. Even when driving a car, I find myself not even listening to anything. I'm just quiet. I'm just there. I'm just present. At home, sometimes I'm just simply present. Sometimes I might find myself sitting there for an hour because the presence is so peaceful, so joyful, so complete that nothing could possibly add one value to it. And so if you're finally finding that you're maybe a little bit tired of what the world has been throwing at you and the trinkets and the shiny objects, and you realize, you know what, the things that I've amassed and the things that I've put in my home, all they are is a burden to me. These are not joyful things anymore. As you've begun to realize that, you've begun to start stretching out your hand towards that joy, the real joy that has always been found inside of you in the form of a deep, abiding peace that you had no idea was there, that you were covering up with so much crap in your life. So, I'm not giving you a how-to. That will come later. But right now, I can tell you that simply stopping for even 3 or 4 seconds and just letting go a little bit, just noticing the body that it breathes on its own without you having to do anything, Digestion happens on its own without you having to do anything. Your immune system is working whether you think it is or not, even with what the news tells you about the pandemic. It is indeed working. Your body is doing all of the things that it was supposed to do, that it's designed to do, that it knows to do without your interference whatsoever. And you begin to let go one by one. You open your fingers on all the stuff that you hang on to dear life as defenses. And you begin to not take yourself so seriously, or the arguments that you put up about other people and the jabs that they may have made at your body or whatever. And you begin just to simply decide for peace and decide for love and decide for joy instead of what the world is trying to sell you. Because the cost is high and it just ain't worth it. So, I hope that kind of leads you down that joy track. We're going to talk about maybe how to go deeper into that joy, how to pursue it a little bit more, but I gave you some nuggets here today about some starting points. If you're already of that spiritual ilk and you've been going that direction, then by golly, I hope this pushes you to follow even deeper paths within, where joy and peace and love and life abide forever and ever. That is something to behold. So, hope that helps. Until next time, I'm Dr. Troy Munson on Words of Radiance.